Hello, everybody. Damn it. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Oh, let me start over with the nice. We have to have a break into it. We can't just be like laughing or whatever. You were laughing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, today, first of all, apologies to Juana. Yesterday, I said it was our 1,102nd video, and she said she thought it was the 1,103rd. You were right.
Okay, so you heard it here. I was right. Ladies out there, we knew I was right the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, so this is our 1,104th video
There you go.
of our blog. Today, article we're going to review. We got a ton of data. It's really good data. A lot of this is new data. Home sales fall again in July as supply drops to near quarter-century low. So a couple things here. The use of the word quarter-century is to make it seem like it's like, you know, a long time. Like George Washington was president the last time we had this few homes for sale. Look, it's 25 years. Basically, in the last 25 years, we're getting pretty close, right? Mm-hmm. But the first part was the one part I'm talking about. It says home sales fall again in July. What this means is June, July.
Right. And
so
we're talking about the number of transactions, not about prices.
Isn't that normal, though? Every year we have less sales in July than in June?
Yeah.
So that's kind of conspicuous. Okay, what we'll do is we'll go through the article, talk about some of the points, and then I've got a couple great charts in here.
Right, but you know,
data.
They're going to say things that make it seem bad, and which gets people to read the article or click on it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're just kind of going through and demystifying some of it and providing some context.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the first bullet point from the article: the median price of a home sold in July was $406,700. An increase of 1.9% from July of last year. So year over year, nationally, home prices are up 1.9%. They're not down 40 or 50% like a lot of people promised they would be. But that is a surprise because a year ago right now you could still get like a 5-something interest rate, and interest rates are like 7.5 almost right now.
You know, and I would actually say that number is probably not quite accurate.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that there are a lot of off-market properties being transacted.
Yeah.
And they're being transacted for probably at or above market value.
Okay.
And so they don't show up in this data, right? Because this data is using MLS data. So let me give you an example. There's somebody who came on the video blog and put in there that, you know, a realtor shoved a letter under his door and offered him a ridiculous amount of money for his property, and he took it. Now, that particular sale never made it in this data.
Yep.
Because it's off MLS.
They're all pulling MLS data.
Right. So I think that there's a lot more of that. And the truth of it is that if they had not offered him a ridiculous amount of money, he would have said no thanks because he had no intention of selling. But when you offer somebody a ridiculous amount of money, they go, yeah, you know, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Here's the next one. Sales fell month to month in all regions except the West. Mm-hmm. That's where we are. Where they gained 2.7%, sales fell the most in the Northeast, down 5.9%. We kind of got hit a little harder last fall, mm-hmm. but we've definitely made up for it. We've had steep price increases, especially in Vegas. If you bought, I mean, our median list price is up $100,000 just in the last like 9 or 10 months mm-hmm. from last year. So it's up substantially in Vegas. Okay. There were 1.11 million homes for sale at the end of July. 14.6% fewer than July of last year, and half of pre-COVID supply. Now, the last time, here's the interesting thing. Remember how it said a quarter century? Mm-hmm. They were talking about 2004. Remember that when it was just like it was a couple years ago. We would take a listing, and we would put in the listing, we will review all the offers Friday night. Mm-hmm. And we put the listing in on Wednesday. And we would get like, 17 offers on the house. And we would go over the seller's house and sit with 17 offers and go over them. Because we knew that we were going to get multiple offers on these properties. The country, though, there were less homes. We've mm-hmm. built probably 15, 20% more homes. In markets like Vegas, we have 30% more homes. So to have fewer inventory than we had back then is even more, it's a bigger deal, right?
It is. It's a bigger deal. And look, we've talked about this before. Builders can't possibly replace the resale homes. They just can't build fast enough.
Right. At the current sales pace, that represents a 3 0.3 month supply. A 6-month supply is considered balanced between buyer and seller. Now, here's the problem with this number, 3.3 months. We should have over a 6-month supply this time of year. That the 6-month supply is this average throughout the year. Usually you get more than that in the fall and less in the spring, but we're already below that. And that's a problem.
And we've been below that for a long time.
We've been below it. Okay, here's another quote. The West is the most expensive region, but it's also the region that experienced some price declines, says Lauren Chum, chief economist for NAR. So two interesting things there. West is the most expensive because of basically
California.
the coast.
California.
Well, even Washington. Washington, median price in Seattle is over $1 million.
It is, but California has a greater population, greater number of homes that are over $1 million.
Yeah, they are. Okay. Roughly 3/4 of the homes were sold. This is really interesting. Roughly 3/4 of the homes were sold on the market for less than a month. 75% sold in less than a month, indicating still strong demand. About 30% sold for above list price. That is pretty impressive.
That is a seller's market. When 30% of the homes are selling above list price, that is a seller's market.
We do know, because we see every day, that homes are getting multiple offers.
Correct.
Okay. What about luxury homes?
They are getting multiple offers also.
Now, what we're going to do is, before I jump over to this next quote, I'm going to throw up this slide. Okay. Now, this is how hot the market is expected to be for the next year. Okay. This is the Zillow Home Value Index and their forecast. Now, remember, this is not the price. So when you see those two humps, the price didn't fall. This is the year-over-year change. So right now you can see that 0 is the baseline. And what this means is that not since 2020 have we had a year-over-year price decline nationally, according to Zillow's index. Okay. And it actually shows prices year-over-year increasing. They're predicting that by December 2023, there'll be a 5.8% increase over December of 2022. And that by July of 2024, there'll be a 6.5% increase over July of 2023, which was 1.4% higher than July of last year, of 2022. So 2022, and then July of 2023, which was last month, 1.4% higher. And then they're predicting 6.5% more July of 2024. And remember, they're taking into account low inventory, and they're taking into account these interest rates.
Right. So, the interest rates are an interesting thing. Depending on who you're listening to, they think that the Fed will reduce interest rates. And some people think that they'll reduce them quite a bit. I happen to think that they'll reduce them maybe like a 1/4 point, but the market will anticipate more reductions down the road, and they will adjust mortgage interest rates accordingly. So let me give you an example. Right now, traditionally speaking, mortgage rates are 1.75% higher than the Fed rate, right? So using that math, the Fed rate is what, like 4%?
Yeah.
So using that math, interest rates should be like 5 3/4, but they're not. They're 7. So, I think at some point the market will find its footing again, and we'll go back to the traditional spread between the Fed interest rate and the mortgage rate. So even a slight downward adjustment by the Fed could mean a bigger move in the mortgage interest rate market.
Right. Just the markets anticipate the dropping of rates. Okay.
Right.
Here's the problem with that, though. If you're a buyer and you're like, yes, what I've finally been waiting for to happen, interest rates to drop. The problem is, with this low inventory, if interest rates drop, it's just going to be, hellish.
It's going to be a feeding frenzy.
It'll be a feeding frenzy. So, the people right now, because we've got to ask this question, like, who's buying all these homes? Affordability is like the worst it's been. Well, people with cash and people with putting money down. They don't really care about the interest rate. They got to park cash. And we showed this slide where the current amount of money people have in their checking account and checkable, meaning they could pull it out of accounts, is 4.5 times more than it was 3 years ago. They have
Right.
4.5 more times cash in the bank than they had 3 years ago. And I can vouch for that.
Right. So, but here's the thing. We're also aware that credit card debt is at all-time highs. We're also aware that the student loans are, people have to start making their payments next month. We're aware that people are getting close to the point where they might have some trouble making those credit card payments. They might, like if you look at your credit card statement, look at the interest rates. I mean, there are credit cards out there with 30% interest. 30% annual interest. That's insane.
Yeah, pay those off, guys.
Okay.
Okay, pay those off.
So there is that, and then when you're dealing with the car loans are going to be the next domino to fall. So we do understand that there's definitely some possible distress in the market coming up. But what we've said before is people who own homes have equity in their homes. So our theory is that people are going to look at their debt and maybe they'll restructure their debt, right? Maybe they will either refinance the house so that they can get rid of their debt. And by the time they refinance the house, even though refinancing the house puts the house at a higher interest rate, their monthly payment will actually be lower than if they made monthly payments on their individual debts.
Oh, sure, if they had a 30%. I think they'll just do HELOCs. I don't think they'll do a refi.
So
I don't think they would refi the whole, wipe out the whole 3%. I think they'll just try to get a second or something.
Right. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that people will use their home as a piggy bank to bail themselves out of their other debts. And when that happens, then we might start talking about people having less equity. But right now, people have a lot of equity.
Okay, home shoppers have seen the number of options dwindle as homeowners are largely content to stay put and enjoy their current home, especially those with a low mortgage rate, says Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com. We've talked about that like on every video, I think. Okay, here's this great data that we got. Okay, this was pretty recent data. Buyers continue to use cash to gain a competitive advantage. All cash sales made up 26% of transactions, the same as June, but up from 24% in July of 2022. So it's about a quarter. Now remember, this is nationwide. Vegas typically is more. We see more in Vegas. Over 50% of all the homes, condos, townhomes in Vegas are owned free and clear in Vegas. And then when you take their other 50%, they're mostly either, mostly paid off or they have very low interest rates.
Right.
That's why our market there was a bunch of people panic sold and like fake drove the prices down. But they just gave away, like they would come on the market and after a week freak out and dump the price, and then they would just give the house away. And then they would be like, oh, the neighbor just, got more for the house. And they realized they just sold their house at a loss because they were afraid.
Right.
And they didn't really need to do that.
So a lot of the reason why Vegas enjoys such a high number of cash purchases is because about 20% of our inflow of people who are buying homes are from California, particularly Southern California, and they are coming from markets where their homes are much more expensive, so it's a lot easier for them to come here and purchase homes cash.
Investors who tend to use cash most bought 16% of homes in July. It marked a decrease from 18% in June, but was up 14% in July of 2022. So investors are still out there. Now, these investors predominantly are not institutional investors. These are mom and pop. They're just people like you watching that went out and picked up another rental house.
Right.
Maybe you bought the whole thing cash, you put 50% down, but you went and you decided it's time to go get another rental. Because you figured out the market's not going to crash. I got a bunch of cash and I need to put it somewhere.
Right.
Right. Okay. First time buyers appear to be gaining steam again. This one surprised me. The realtors reported 30% of sales going to these buyers, up from 27% in June. Okay. 30%, but these first-time buyers does not mean barely can afford to live in the place, that they're 100% loan to value, that a lot of these first-time buyers are either high-income earners or they've saved substantially.
Well, they're throughout the spectrum, right? So they're anything from, VA, FHA, all the way down the line to 20, 30, 40% down. So. But
they're not all. What I'm saying is they're not all, I can barely afford the house, oh my God.
No.
Right. Because we know that, the number of people putting money down is substantial.
Well, we also know that people who can barely afford the house are not getting the loan.
Yeah, they're not getting they're not getting loan accepted because the seller's going, why would I take them when I can take them? They're putting cash, they're putting 30% down. They know they're not going to have a problem later on.
Well, and the lenders won't approve a loan that, of somebody who can barely qualify.
Yeah. Okay. Which is different from 2006 and 5 and all that when they just throwing loans at people. Okay. The housing market is at a pivotal point as we head into fall, said Lisa Sturdivant, chief economist at Bright MLS, noting higher mortgage rates in particular. The decision between renting and buying will tip in favor of renting for some consumers, particularly in markets where rents are falling and new apartments are coming online. Now, is this a rent trap where you say, hey, it's $300 more a month to buy, so I'll just rent because it's $300 less. I can't afford the extra $300 to buy. And then the next year, you just get stuck in the situation because in some markets, New York City, San Francisco, probably San Diego, it's always cheaper to rent than buy. Like Tulsa, Oklahoma is probably a market where you could probably go there and say, hey, I could buy a house or rent a house, and it's probably better to buy, right? But probably not up and down the West Coast.
So it depends. It also depends on how long you're going to be there. So, if you've just moved to town and you don't know the area, it makes sense to rent until you get to know the area and figure out where you want to live. If you're only going to be there for a year or so, it doesn't make sense to buy it. It makes sense to rent. So everybody's situation is different.
Juana, let's talk. The last thing we'll talk about before we end the video.
Okay.
The absence of inventory right now. Especially in Vegas. Like we have less inventory in Vegas now than we have normally in the spring when it's a hot market. Buying season is going to pick up in a couple months across the country. And we are at a low, like the thing said, a quarter century low in July. Like we have less homes available in July today than we had in 2021 in like April, May when it was a super hot market. So what is that like? How is this going to resolve itself? Like, how do we get more houses on the market? Because, it seems like 4 million houses a year. There's 37 million people trying to buy a house, and there's going to be 4 million that sell this year.
Right. So the short answer is that there isn't an answer that's going to work immediately. And there are just so many competing factors. So, for example, we've talked about, if the Fed were to raise interest rates, and that would throw some buyers out of the market, and then that would allow some inventory to build up. Well, that's all fine and good, except that the Fed is busy borrowing money to service its existing debt and to pay its bills. And so raising interest rates doesn't really work because then it's got to pay the higher interest on the money that it borrows. So there are a lot of different nuances as far as what the Fed can do. And I don't think that home buyers and the housing market is its primary concern.
Okay. We've had a recession coming any day now for 18 months.
And that may still come. Like I said before, there is a concern regarding the buildup of credit card debt, the student loans coming due, the issues with the car loan. So there is a concern out there. There's definitely some headwinds to the economy. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. I think it's a fool's errand to keep saying that the recession's coming, because yes, eventually it's coming, but it just, to me, feels like Chicken Little. Everybody just keeps saying, or crying wolf rather, that everybody keeps saying that the wolf's at the door, and then when the wolf really is at the door, no one's going to believe him.
Okay, it seems to me, for every headwind we've had in the last 3 years, we've had 2 tailwinds. And I think that's the best way to summarize what's been going on with housing. The only thing right now, there's 2 headwinds. One is the looming recession, which is not real because it hasn't happened yet. It probably won't happen. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and all these big firms have a 25% chance of recession, and they're saying it's for only a small recession, a very mild recession. 75% are saying there won't be any recession at all. The only real headwind we have are interest rates, which historically 7.5% is not ridiculous. They probably won't be there forever.
Right. Well, I think the other headwind that we have besides the debt and the interest rates, I think it's employment. And you're going to say, what? But here's the thing, ADP is saying that employers are now hiring people for slightly less money than they were hiring people before. So that tells you that there is some softness in that market, and people will have to tighten their belt a little bit. So again, that kind of goes for those gloom and doom people who say the recession is coming. There are some things of concern, but I just think that there's so much strength right now that I think we're still a ways off, and there's too much uncertainty in the market to put money down on the recession's coming. I mean, are we going to have a recession? Yes. When? I don't know, but I don't see one in our immediate future. We'll put it that way.
I agree.
Okay, so what do you think out there? I've given you something different than I usually give you, which is all these kind of negative things about the economy, because I know that they are out there, and I want to make sure that you guys know that we're not ignoring them. We are aware of them.
Yep.
So tell us what you think about both the gloom and doom part and the low inventory and the increased prices and all of this. We want to know your thoughts. Remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.